Hey everyone, welcome back to our series on the books of the Bible. And today we're going to be looking at the book of Nehemiah. Last week we got in and we looked at the book of Ezra and we talked about how Ezra was telling the story of the first two groups that came out of Assyrian captivity. At least at the time that they were taken into captivity, it was Assyrian captivity. But remember all the way back into 1st and 2nd Chronicles and 1st and 2nd Kings, where we were told why the people of Judah were carried into captivity and the people of Israel because of their wickedness, their lack of ability or desire to follow God. But ultimately, God is going to save a remnant, a small group of these people, and the books of Ezra and Nehemiah are what tell us that. Last week, we looked at in Ezra how there were two groups. The first one carried by a man named Zerubbabel, or led by a man named Zerubbabel, where they came back with the intention of rebuilding the temple, and then the second one was led by Ezra, kind of to restore the word of God to the people. And today, we're going to look at the third and final group of people that is carried out of the Assyrian or the Babylonian captivity. And this is led by a man named Nehemiah. And of course, it is told in the book of Nehemiah. What's interesting is when you go all the way back, the Hebrew Bible had these two books as a singular book called, I believe, Ezra. And then as you move forward in time, it split into two books, but it was called Ezra 1, or 1st Ezra and 2nd Ezra, until finally they were split into what we know today as Ezra and Nehemiah. And the book of Nehemiah starts off kind of where we left off, or in a similar situation. There is a charge or a report that is sent back to the people, and specifically to Nehemiah, of the things that were going on in Jerusalem. And we read about this in Nehemiah chapter 1. And it says that the words of Nehemiah, it says there at first, but then it goes on, it talks about how there was a report that was sent back. And in this report, they are told that the Israelites, or the people of Judah that are in Jerusalem, are basically being attacked on every side. They write back and they say the walls of the city are torn down all the way around us. There is no security that is here. And this makes sense when we go back and we read the book of Ezra, because reading the book of Ezra, it talks about how the people were pressing against them, how they were attacking them, how they were opposing the work as they were building the temple. So following this, Nehemiah goes and he starts to talk to the king, Artaxerxes. And as he goes in, ultimately he requests that Artaxerxes allows him to return to Jerusalem to rebuild the walls of the city. And this is the main purpose of the book of Nehemiah. It is telling of the carrying out of Babylonian captivity, or the carrying out of the captivity of the people of Judah, for the purpose that they are going to go back and they are going to rebuild the walls of the city of Jerusalem. Well, as we go through, after they are given this permission, Nehemiah ultimately goes and he inspects the walls. And it says in certain places he couldn't even get through on his animal, whatever it may have been, a donkey or a horse or whatever he was riding. But the walls were so torn down and it was such a rough area that he couldn't even get through. The walls of the city of Jerusalem had been completely destroyed when they were overtaken by Babylon, however many years ago. So as we move forward, ultimately, Nehemiah and the people that come out of captivity with him are going to help to rebuild this wall. So the work starts on the wall, and the work is going well, but just like when we saw the things that were done under Zerubbabel with the rebuilding of the temple that we read about in the book of Ezra last week, there is also opposition to this. There are nations that start to rise up against them. They are being attacked, and for a while the work stops, but the people are going to continue. And for a long time, the people go to work with their tools for building on one side and a sword on the other. There would take shifts, basically, where people would stand there with spears while the other people would work, and then they would switch. The next person would stand there with a spear while the others would work on the wall. And as we go down through the rest of the book of Nehemiah, at least up to chapter 6, tells about them rebuilding the wall, the problems that they had, until in chapter 6, where we see that ultimately the work is finished. As we continue through the book of Nehemiah, it lists the people that left the captivity and have returned, the remnant of Israel, if you will. It talks about Ezra reading the law like we read about in the book of Ezra. It talks about how he teaches the people the word of God, and the people are sorrowful and they weep because of this. And it says that the people start to confess their sins. They turn away from their wickedness. And then in chapters 9 and 10, the people make a covenant to God. They basically make a promise that they are not going to do the things that their fathers had done. They are going to hold to the word of God that they have just read, and that is now being taught in the temple of a freshly secured city. This is the purpose of the book of Nehemiah. It talks again about the people coming out of captivity. The people of God as they go, this remnant that God has protected, that he has cared for. How God still shows that he loves his people. It shows how they go and they secure the city of Jerusalem. How they are protected, how God is going to be worshiped in this city. And ultimately, this city is going, or these people are going to be the ones that are going to bring the bloodline of Christ as we move on into the New Testament. But I want to leave us with one final passage, and it's probably one of the more well-known passages from the book of Nehemiah, but it is Nehemiah chapter 4 and verse 6, and I think it sums up the book fairly well and also gives us something to think about that we can apply to ourselves as we go to our own congregations, as we work as Christians in this world. In Nehemiah chapter 4 and verse 6, it says, "So built we the wall, and all the wall was joined together unto the half thereof. For the people had a mind to work." What a beautiful thought that is as we start to look at it. The people that have left the captivity, the people that are the remnant of Israel, these people that are left over, that are going and doing the work, they had a mind to get this work done. One of the most beautiful things, it's hard to wrap up in just a simple, short part, but in chapter 3, it talks about the people as they go rebuilding the wall. And it's hard to read it, but starting in chapter 3, it goes, "And the sons of Hassenaah built the fish gate, and they laid its beams and set its doors and its bolts and its bars. And next to them, Miramoth, the sons of Uriah, sons of Hakaz, repaired. And next to them, Meshullam, the sons of Berekah, and the son of Mehuzabel repaired." And it goes on and on like that with lots of very difficult to pronounce names, but we get the understanding that you have family next to family next to family. This person is standing doing the work next to this person, who is standing doing the work next to this person. And all the way around the city of Jerusalem, there were these groups of people. There were these families that stood, and they all had a mind to work. So much so that they were able to put up with, and they were able to work through the difficulties and the opposition that was being put up. Brethren, as Christians, we need to have a similar mindset. In your congregation, we need to have people that have a mind to work. We need to have people that have a desire to do the things that God has set before us, and that are willing to stand family next to family, person next to person, and methodically and intentionally do the work that God has set before us. The book of Nehemiah, I think, is the greatest book to look at if we are looking for an example of how God's people are supposed to work. So I hope this has been encouraging and uplifting to us. The book of Nehemiah is a very beautiful book, and it tells the history of the Israelites in this remnant, but also gives us something to look at on how we are supposed to look as or work as the people of God. I hope this has been useful to us. Next week, we will continue on looking at the books of the Bible. So thank you all very much for watching.